OK, coming up to 13 minutes past 3 on BBC Radio Norfolk. Now, we all know Norfolk to be about a lot of things, charming countryside, lots of farming, but who would have thought it could be known for its comedy improv scene? Well, we have Chris Reid from BBC's New Comedy in the studio, and with him, Tim Soszko. Now, Tim, did I get that right? Soszko?
So you hit it perfectly. I was actually saying out in the waiting room out there, like, there's not many people who say my name correctly.
What's the worst you've had?
Suzuki. Soszko is usually pretty common.
He's not from round here, he's from Chicago. Can't you tell by the voice? Anyway, Tim has been running improv workshops all week ahead of his show tonight in Great Yarmouth. So
he's not. The show tonight is in Norwich, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tim's show. No, that's okay. There's
cross out. Right. It's Norwich. Right. So, okay, well, we'll clarify all that at the end. Yeah. Great to see you both. And you've come all the way from Chicago. And
that's right.
So just tell me about improvisation. So improv is the shortened version improvisation. And we remember it from Whose Line Is It Anyway, which was big about 15 years ago. Haven't seen it on the telly for ages. So it's like it's established improv and gone away. So what's the scene like?
The scene in Chicago is actually where sort of modern improvisation started, with places like Second City and I.O. or Improv Olympic. And it has grown there and become its own art form. When it first came out, it just used to be a tool for actors to use to get up on stage and do scripted work. And now it has become its own art form. So you see, like, Whose Line Is It Anyway, which we call short form improvisation. And then there's long form as well, which is with just one suggestion from the audience, a group can go on 30, 45 minutes, an hour, even beyond that, creating everything from just one suggestion, nothing pre-planned, nothing pre-scripted at all.
So if the audience, so you turn to the audience, go, what do you want us to do? They shout out a word, and from that could get 45 minutes of
absolutely anything. Now, there are some groups there's a group called Spontaneous Sherlock, which it's all based around Sherlock and Watson and those kinds of adventures. But it's always, Sherlock Holmes and the case of what you name it.
Oh, and then you shout it out, and then, I get it. Right.
Exactly, and then they've got to perform that.
So what's happening around here then, Chris?
Well, I run an improv company called Dogface Improv. I got into improv, like, as you're saying, when I was a kid, I used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway and think, not only enjoy it, but think, that looks like so much fun. I want to do that. And when I lived down in Brighton, moved back for about 7 years. I moved back to Norwich 3 years ago. There's a lovely improv scene in Brighton, so I went to a few courses and got quite into...
Courses?
Yeah, absolutely. And so now in Norwich, we're replicating that, and through Dogface, we run courses, and people can come and have a go, and it's a really fun thing to do.
Right, so let's take a starting point just to help me. So do you need to be funny anyway? So do you need to be sort of a comedian?
No, that's actually a great question, because a lot of people think that. They go into a class that I'll teach or that Dogface will teach thinking that I got to be funny, I got to be witty, I got to be creative, I got to be... No, it's literally a tool to be used for lots of different things. And it just so happens that sort of a fun side effect is that it is funny. But I use it in corporate work. So a company will hire me to help train their sales team to be better communicators, to listen better to each other, to say yes to one another, as opposed to undercutting people or throwing somebody under the bus or something like that. They will... it helps in a lot of different places, executive and leadership skills, communication. It's a really, really great tool for that.
One thing that I found is it's really good for well-being and for mental health as well. It's been really good for my mental health. I've got a history of depression and things like that, and I find it really, really good. It doesn't have to lead to comedy performance. It can just be a really nice thing to do, and we have a lot of people coming to our workshops and classes who just like to get together and do it just because it feels good, and you don't necessarily have to get on stage at the end of it. But of course you can, and we provide that opportunity as well.
So you've broken it out of its shackles for me in the sense that I thought it had to be comedy.
Right.
No, yeah. Doesn't need to.
So well, okay, so what's the entertainment value of watching a bunch of people improvise if it isn't to laugh?
Well, what's the entertainment value of a dramatic play? It's, it can be dramatic as well as comedic. It can be moving and touching. In fact, my ambition is to make somebody laugh and cry in the same show.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Or at least have them have an experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and some sort of emotional experience. Yeah, to make you laugh or cry. And
this isn't to say that every single type of improvisation is for every single person out there. You know, there's some people who do just love the whose line is it anyway, those short form games that you play where you are looking for kind of, you know, those funny one-liners. And then there's other people who like more of a story and more of a long form piece.
But it has to be said, it more often than not does end up being funny because, you know, improv reflects life and life is funny and people come along. The real point of improv is you don't have to try and force the funny. You don't have to come and stand up and make jokes. What we find is using the improv principles and collaborating, actually it just is organically funny.
Well, interesting you say that. Improv principles. Give us the improv principles then. What are the principles of improv?
Some things I've already mentioned, like saying yes to each other, agreeing with each other, and all of these are going to sound like, yeah, duh, of course that's what you would do, but it's hard to put that into practice. So we call, we say listening, but what we mean is actively listening. Like I'm watching you play with that pen that you're playing with in your hands right now, and then folding your arms.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Stop it. Okay.
Your emotion, your facial expression, your body language, the tone of your voice, as well as the words you say. I'm listening and observing and absorbing all of that. That's a big part of improv.
So that helps you or indicates how you should react when you're making your bit up.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Right.
So if you were playing with the pen in your hand just now, I could have made a comment on that and been like, I see that you're playing with your hand right there. Kind of ticks me off. Now you're making me nervous, right? I can comment and then you can see what I'm doing and respond to what I'm saying. Yeah. Just this back and forth.
There's just going into broadcasting, and you've alluded to the fact with that voice that when I went, oh my goodness, we'd all die for a voice like that, wouldn't we, in radio? But when you're talking about you do voiceovers, one broadcasting guru who I know is American called Dan O'Day, he once said to a whole load of radio presenters, never deny the verbal reality. Now, it sounds like a glib phrase, but what he meant was if you're co-presenting and your presenter comes in and says, what do you think of the new hat I'm wearing? And they're not wearing a hat, you have to go with it.
Yes.
So that's a suggestion of improv, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, that seems like a very similar principle, actually, because of course we don't have sets or costumes or anything like this, so everything is built up from nothing, and it's this process of agreeing with each other and building that we call yes and, so you're agreeing and building something. And if you're both doing that and both really listening to each other, then what you get is this beautiful reality that's created between you that effortlessly just materializes and quite often tends to be funny or interesting in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand how it begins. How does it end? And when do you know?
That's a great question, Tim.
You're still doing it from last night.
Yeah, exactly. The way that I teach is not to find an ending. It's that you have other people, because it's ensemble based. Usually improv is, and so you have these other players, 4, 5, 10 other players that are watching you do this scene, and they're going to know when it's the right time for that scene to be done. Or you have a host who says, here's the next game we're going to play, and then let's get the suggestion from the audience, get these 2 players out, these 2 players will play, and then the host knows when to call scene and when to end it. Yeah. You're not searching. We're not looking for beginning, middle, and end. We're looking for just let's keep going until it is stopped.
It feels like the right moment. Yeah. And, you know, as we've alluded to, as we've spoken about directly, it's such a broad spectrum, improv, like from the real, and we do both types in Norwich. We have short form nights, so people can come and watch Whose Lines Anyway style shows where it's more game based and it's more built for laughs and it will be a funny show, and then right to the other end of the spectrum of long form where it's a more dramatic piece, and everything in between is there as well. And we run long form nights regularly. We've got one at Janet's Bar down at Wensum Lodge next Thursday, so people can come and see all of the different types and get involved and have a go themselves if they like.
So anybody could do this?
Everybody
can do it.
Improv.
Everybody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, most people, well, you know, I work with radio presenters around the country, you know, so I'm sort of encouraging them to say what they think, because guess what? It's a part of an attachment with the audience, isn't it? It's a one-to-one.
Right.
Yep.
But a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but the one barrier you come up against is, well, if it isn't written down, I don't know what I'm going to say, you know, and all that sort of thing. But of course you do, don't you?
Every conversation that you have every day is improvised. You don't have a script for when you call.
I don't have one here.
Yeah,
you should have noticed.
So I mean, everything is you're already improvising all the time. Just people come into it with that mental block of, I need to be prepared because I have to be entertaining and it has to be funny. So what I like to tell people again is, you're going to be funny, you're going to be entertaining, you're going to be witty and creative, you're going to be all those things. You already are all those things. You just have to get out of your own way. If you try to be all of those things, it's harder to get there. Get out of your own way. Just listen, say yes, work with the group, and you're going to, you'll find all those things.
I like get out of your own way.
You're literally taking notes.
No, that's great. That's a great phrase. Get out of your own way. It says it, doesn't it? Just sort of, in a sense, relax or whatever.
You'll have to come and give it a go, David. We have drop-in workshops.
Well, look, just let's nail it now. What can we see? Where can we see it round here? And where can we see this man with this voice from Chicago?
Right. So we have a lot going on. Tim is with us until tomorrow morning. So we are in a show with him tonight. You can see Tim perform, and you can see me and my partner Danny perform as well, and some of the students that have been taught by him this week. That's at 8 o'clock. That's at Grove Walk at St Albans Church Hall. There'll be tickets on the door for £5. People can just come along to that. If they're interested in seeing some long form, we have our long form nights are starting up next week, and it's Thursday night at Jernet's Bar next week. And in addition, there's courses starting in October, and we have a weekly drop-in session where people can just come and have a taster and see if they like it. All of the information is at dogfaceimprov.com or at Facebook on the Dogface page. But yeah, come and have a go. And as I say, David, you'd be welcome any time to come and have a go.
I almost would. Here's the funny thing. I was going to say to you, what's it all about? And you go, I don't know.
Yeah.
See, what's it all about? I don't know. Till someone starts something off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Blank canvas.
Most of the time you shouldn't know. If you're pre-planning too much, if you're scripting, we call it, then you're working against yourself and your scene partner in that moment. You got to build it together in that moment.
I've just written that. I'm going to go with get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Love it. Great to meet you.
Oh, very nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for having us on.
No, not at all. It's something that I was sort of vaguely aware of, but I think you've painted a great picture of it. And listen, everyone, you've heard where to do it. Go and have a go.
Yeah, come on.
I might too. Nice to meet you.
On Saturday, the 8th of September, Radio Norfolk will be